we're now recording the dust dyeing with Cushing dyes, Unnatural Dying with Elena Dent.
Okay, so the cool thing about Cushings is they tend to break, that is, shift color anyway. But this helps them along. This is a Cormo, which is a very fine wool. And the neat thing is I've carded in some Angeline fiber, which is a mylar. And I admit,
Pretty sparkle.
huh?
Pretty sparkle. We
Oh
can see
yeah,
it.
it's shiny. It's extraordinarily shiny. And I seem to have a green streak going. I meant to do a sea blue, this sea bluish green this afternoon, and it failed miserably. It became green again. Oh well. So this is, I don't know if you can even see it, but there's a coppery green stuff in it. It's called Enchanted Forest, which I am addicted to. So the first bath was actually quite dark. So I said, okay, fine. I'm gonna have to throw in some more fiber. And the results were this. And I hit it with a couple of other colors. I tend to use, I'm actually out of my favorite myrtle green, but I always use green, blue, probably some rust, which is a color like burnt sienna in that it will work beautifully with oranges, reds, and also with blues and greens. It's I don't know if you all are familiar with artists' colors, but it's an incredible color. Years ago, the fiber dye retreat, I did this class, and somebody threw turquoise and orange in. This looks much greener than the real piece. On my screen, I'm seeing the blues coming up nicely. The orange is nowhere near as bright as it really is. And it looked awesome. So I said, I got to do that. There, that one's coming up nicely. This also has the shiny in it. This is Enchanted Forest and Rose Gold. And I've used orange, peacock. I think I used rust. Yeah, and I used rust. And what happened was that averaged out to a green as well, because what happens is you usually don't completely exhaust the dye bath. You have a tint in that water. So then you have to say, well, what's the next color I'm going to use? If it's too dark, you can give up and throw out the water. If it's faint, if it's a light color, you can go, okay, I'll go with that. What resulted was actually a fairly clear, rich green. So I went with it again. More green. But I also smacked it with some orange. Because why not? What's the worst I can do to it, right? What you'll want to do with your colors is, if you know color theory at all, you don't necessarily want to put direct opposites, blue to orange, yellow to violet, red to green. You're going to get brown, which if that's what you want, fine, but you usually want something more than brown. But splitting it, red orange to turquoise, red orange to violet, that works really nicely. So you can play around with your colors that way, and I've got a lot of descriptions in the handout, and please use it. You'll see some of the colors you can get. This red gold again, or rose gold, and this time I used garnet and several other reds and some orange, and the Cushing's cherry. What the? Why is it showing it glossy? It shouldn't. Anyway, the Cushing's cherry is a screaming magenta. It's printer's magenta. How bizarre. Those highlights aren't there at all. I don't know why it's showing those. Strange. That must be artifact of some kind. The pickup to that, which is a bright red, is a sort of brick rose. much. The color is going really wonky on this. It's a lot more golden, a lot richer color. Strange. Huh. The color is dull, and it isn't in this. It's sort of a rose brick. Where the heck is it? We're overshooting. If you're going to use Mylar, you want to use fairly dark colors. If you use too light a color, which this isn't, if your color is too light, the Mylar not only won't show it, may make your wool look just dirty. So this is rose gold with purple, excruciatingly purple. And this one was the pickup, which I simply smacked it with some more violet and a little more blue. It's a little more violet than this and not quite as intense as it seems on the screen. So then the next day I said, okay, I'm going to do some lighter colors so you can actually see what it's doing.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
When you say pickup, does that mean the water that you have left over, you put the bat into the water and then you
Yes.
add some more color?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm not, that's odd. I'm not seeing the text or the chat for this group. Let me try something. Huh. I'm just seeing the Scour chat. I'm not seeing this group's chat. That's disconcerting. I guess you're
It's
gonna
the
have to
same
unmute
chat.
to
It's
say
the
again?
same chat because the meeting itself just kept going.
Yeah,
So there aren't any new questions yet.
I guess not. Okay,
What
good.
we had.
So this one, which we're not seeing the color well, it isn't as rich as it should be. Weird that I'm getting highlights. I took garnet, cherry, terracotta, probably threw orange on that as well, but you can see that it's lighter. And what I did is I wanted a variation in light and dark as well as in hue and as in color. So you see a strong red, a purplish color, that was mulberry probably because I love mulberry. Down here is cherry, which is again your magenta, orange, and probably rust because I use a lot of rust. That time I didn't change the water at all because it was a very pale pink. So, as you do, I threw in some violet and some blue, and this is a coarser wool. I'm not sure what it is. It was either the light gray or a kind of a red roan. And you can see again variation. And when I spin this, these colors will average more. It'll be a lovely heather. So what you do is you look at your dye bath each time and say, what can I do with it? If I were going to go for yellows, I wouldn't use this rinse at all. I might use this one, red, because that'll give me some oranges, but I wouldn't get a good pure yellow. And if I wanted a yellow green, yeah, I wouldn't use that one either. This, here we go. Going from violet, we started messing with blues. Copenhagen, Royal, Turquoise. And the Royal is more intense than it really is. It's a nice dark blue. But what happens is if you want these variations, you want to vary it both in light to dark and in the color. If you want a subtle one, you can do two things. You can start the bath with the acid and the water at just whatever temperature it was when you threw it in. Throw your wool in, then put the dye in, and what'll happen is the dye won't bite. So you'll let it go until it's evened out a little bit, opened up a lot. Then by now the heat's coming up and you'll get some variation, but not nearly as obvious or extreme. And then if it's fairly light, if you were sensible and use just a little bit of dye, your base color is fairly light. So then you smack it with 2 or 3 darker colors. Let's see, there's the green, where you can see there's rust, seal brown, turquoise green, which is like phthalo green. It's a powerful, intense color. And what little myrtle was left. I love myrtle green because it turns to peridot green, and I love that color. And lately I seem to be keeping with green, 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 or for a change, green. So I didn't mean to do that. So that's the verbal stuff. Are there any questions? It's mostly about being willing to look at your fiber and say, you know, it's only a couple ounces. Let's see what happens if I get this color in here. What happens with that color? What if I hit it with this other color? You can get some indication if you have a white saucer. You can get it wet and dust a little bit of the color on there and see what it'll do when it breaks. Plum, for instance, is a dark violet with what looks almost like seal brown, which is a deep chocolate brown, and possibly a tiny bit of a rusty color, but the overall color is going to be violet. The only color I've found so far that you absolutely don't want to use is Cushing's burgundy. It's exactly between purple, brown, or violet, brown, and red, and it will muddy and ruin any color. I tried it a couple times, gave up, threw it out. But plum's a good modifier and mulberry's a good modifier. Any more questions? That was only 15 minutes.
Yeah, I put one on there. Do you start with a bat or do you
Yeah.
start with roving and then flatten it out?
You can use roving too. What you'll do with roving is you'll go back and forth like that. And the cool thing is, yes, you'll get splotching and you'll get repeats. But what you can do, and I learned this from a friend of mine who called it fractal dying, is when your bat is fully dry, you split it lengthwise. Then you take that 1/2 and split that into 4 or even 8 and spin one after the other. So you've got really quick repeats of your colorway, whatever it may be. Then you take your long one and you just have it with the very long repeats. Apply that on itself and you get a completely different look than you would get as if you split it in 4, for instance, and spun it, which you'll still get your repeats. When you do the fractal, you don't get repeats. Exactly. You kind of do, but you don't. And it looks quite different. It's what you might want to do is do 2 rovings and try it the way you've always spun it, and then try the fractal method and see what you get. And no, I'm not, if anybody typed something, I'm not seeing anything typed. Oh, there it is. I can see if, I was thinking I can try and share a screen, but I don't remember how to do that here.
It should be down at the bottom of your screen. I think if you're on a laptop, the icons might disappear until you hover over them.
Security, participants, chat, share screen.
And then you'll have to choose which it'll show you all the screens you have.
Okay. Files. Oh, how nice. Where? No, basic. Okay. Ah. Haha. Got it. Okay. So that is what that first green looked like. Can you see it?
Hmm.
Okay. When I first started to mix the colors, that was that green. You'd never think it.
I don't see it. Do people see it?
Is this coming in?
Nope.
Meh. That's odd.
Huh.
It isn't, huh?
Sorry about that.
Figures. I was having a
If you want to, if you have something that I can link to, I can try and share it. I don't know
well,
if
let's see.
it's on your computer. It won't work though.
Yeah, I am on my computer.
Ah, okay.
Well, so much for that idea.
Oh, sorry about that.
What I'll do is I'll just dump them on. I have 65 photos. Now, how do I get the rest of Zoom back? Come here. There. To record this computer screen. Okay. Da, 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 da. It must be a privacy setting that I can't figure out how to correct.
Oh, could be.
Figures. Which makes sense, actually, I guess. It's kind of exasperating. Sorry.
Can I ask a general question
Sure.
about what would you choose to do with dust dyeing versus, I don't know, squirt bottles? Any just kind of more conventional?
I started, as my handout said, I originally got I'd Rather Die Laughing, which is a cute little booklet. I think was written in the 80s. And she did use liquid dye. And I found that the splash dyeing, I tended to get more discrete blobs of color, which is what I did not want. So I started dusting it, and I liked the way the colors melded and shifted together. If you have concerns about breathing this stuff, liquid's a good way to go. And if you're doing this all the time, if you're doing this week after week after week after week, by all means, use the liquid. Squirt dyeing will work for you. I found I just like the results from dusting it. There are a few risks. Don't ever just use a spoon. I was fortunate the one time I tried that, I happened to use a rather coarse wool like Romney. And I had these little globules, same thing you get when you didn't mix your gravy properly and you have lumps.
Hmm.
You don't want lumps. They're annoying. I was able to get rid of them with a lot of effort, but the salt shakers are effective, they work. I also discovered this last dyeing session that I really prefer the bigger square cross-section ones, not the cuter little triangular ones, because it's really hard to get this dye into the container with the little openings. Cushings does not have any inert substance in it to help spread the dye out. See, that's another thing. If you're working with some of the other brands, which are larger jars, they have an inert substance in there that just helps the dye disperse more easily. Cushing's doesn't have that. They figure they'll only sell you the dye, which is fine. And I think also because this dye is used for rug hooking, where they want variations in their color. They don't want a flat color. They're more likely to like that fact about it anyway. The reason that I use cornstarch is I thought, okay, I want something that's inert. I don't have chalk handy. I don't want to use baking powder because baking powder is alkali, not good for my wool, probably won't work well with the dye. Fine, I'll try cornstarch. And then I emailed them some years later and said, is this a good idea? And they said, yeah, that's what we do when we're doing the same sort of thing. Anyone else? I'm sorry, I was hoping I could draw this out more.
Actually, I'm going to be a terrible person. I'm watching this from work, and I had to step away from my computer to talk to a customer unexpectedly, because who comes into an art gallery on Valentine's Day?
Sure, what's your question?
I basically missed your whole presentation. What were you talking about? What brand of dye are you using, and what kind of a mordant are you using? And are you dyeing in the fleece, or are you dyeing already spun yarn?
You can use already spun yarn. You will get a strong variation in your colors. If you want a subtle dye, first skein it. Make your choke ties very, very loose. Get it into the water and get it well soaked, and then use colors that are very close in the light to dark range. If you
Okay.
want more, huh?
I said, okay.
If you want more variation, you change the light and dark as well as the colors. Do not use, say, yellow to violet. Well, unless you want that weird green. You don't want direct complements, usually.
Because you get
But
mud.
if you split them, for instance, if you have red-orange, it'll look good with blue-green or with red-violet. Although it might not look terribly good with violet itself. It might look, depending on whether it breaks. I use Cushing dyes. I happen to start with Cushings. I got used to them. I like the way they behave because they give you a lot of variation in color. Even they very rarely dye dead flat. I cut it with cornstarch. I have a handout on the website. I encourage you to open it and use it and keep it for your very own. Share if you like. I'm assuming that you don't spin yet, but you're working with yarn. Am I right?
I spin and I work with yarn. I spin,
Okay.
I weave. Yeah.
Okay. I carded this up and I've lost my own view, so I have no idea what I'm looking at like right now. How did I manage to do that? Can you see me at all? Good.
Yes, I can
Okay.
see.
This is, I've carded in both, no, this one just has Enchanted Forest, Angeline fiber in it. I
Okay.
love this stuff.
I saw your show and tell. I missed all the meat of what you were
Oh,
were talking
So you
about.
see the colors, so okay.
Yeah.
I started dyeing about 35 years ago when you actually could still get the union dyes. For those, you definitely don't want to breathe that stuff. But now they've got either the wool or the cellulose dyes. I never got into dyeing cotton or linen or anything, so I know nothing about that. Oh, silk. If you have a wool silk blend,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to have an interesting time because the temperature the wool needs to, oh, well, no, you can do this. You'll dye it and the silk will discharge the color. It'll say, it's too hot, I don't like you. Puh.
Okay.
No problem. You get the colors that you want in there. You leave everything in the bath, turn off the heat. And as it cools, the silk will go, oh, there's dye.
Okay.
The one thing you want to watch with silk, is if you suddenly smell fish,
Uh-huh.
they did not get the roving as clean as they said they did. So you're gonna have to clean the silk. I
Okay.
use Orvis paste,
Okay.
which you can get online. You can also, if you have a feed and tack place near you, you can get it at the average horse supply place. It's a tub about yay big. It's not cheap, but it will last you for years, even if you do a lot of this. It's sodium lauryl sulfate. Look up the material safety data sheet. It's not, I don't have any problem with it. I think one person I know said they're allergic to coconut, and I believe it's derived from coconut. I don't know. You don't want to use very much, especially if you wash your pets with it. You just need a little bit. If you're doing your fine hand washing, I love this stuff. It rinses out more quickly than Dawn, for one
Okay.
thing. And it doesn't have any dye or anything else in it. No scent, no nothing, just cleaning stuff. So let's see. So you get your silk clean. With silk especially, you'll want to float it in the water. You want the fibers to lift. Wool will very accommodatingly open itself up and kind of float over, and it's fine. Silk goes, nope, not doing that. So you're actually going to have to get in there and massage the color in to get it to open up
Oh, okay.
over and over and over. But you can wear gloves. That's nice. And the temperature is lower. Silk or wool, you want it not quite simmering, too hot to stick your paws in. Silk on a cold day, oh, it feels good. And it's so funny to watch it. I actually decided to see if I could get black on silk. And I used about twice as much as I was supposed to for the volume of silk that I had.
Mhm.
And I threw in some turquoise and some violet just to see if anything would happen. And I massaged it all in. And it was funny. I was looking at the dye bath, and it looked like something's in this ink.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden, the temperature came up and it struck, and I had a black glob of silk snake in nearly clear water.
Wow.
And I still had a white streak in the middle, so I had to do it again. But silk, if you're gentle with it, doesn't care. It won't felt.
Okay.
So, but I have had what should have been a dark color completely spit out its color and just looked sort of like a Landsat photo. And I think I spun it. I don't know what I've done with the yarn. And went through for the entire bat of, I don't know if I like this or not. Hey, this is pretty cool. I don't know if I like this or not. It's, I since did some red and violet. And I had a silk stick when I was done because we did this with my spinning guild, so there wasn't time to clean it beforehand. So I could take my dry roving and hold it up, and I had the whole roving was sticking straight up.
Oh my gosh.
I tried using an iron on that. Had a hell of a time getting the iron clean. So that's when I decided I was going to wash the silk next time it stank like that.
So the reason why you got a stick was because it was dirty?
Harrison.
And what do you do with it after that? Use it as
You're
decoration?
going to have to wash it and get I'd use some Orvis, get it clean. Of course, I lose the dye because the dye is stuck to the Saracen, not to the silk.
Right.
Rinse it well, throw some vinegar in there, and try to dye it again. That's about all you can do. That's why I like working with wool. Wool doesn't argue with me, so long as my wool is clean. I'd rather die laughing. She actually talks about using some raw wool, some clean wool. Then you have to get the grease out. No. I am not a fan of spinning in the grease because I know what's in that grease. It isn't just grease, and it isn't just sheep shit. Or urine, I should say. They aren't housebroken. There are mice, there are birds, both of which carry disease. No, thank you. I don't mind flicking my wool inside. I don't mind having it next to me. I don't mind handling it, but I'm going to scour it if I'm actually going to spin it. So let's see. Your colors, your color theory, you can play with that a lot. In my notes, I did say the one color in Cushing so far that I found that you must never use is burgundy, because it just ruins any color it comes near. It's horrible. If you want a burgundy-like color, I would use mulberry and possibly garnet if you want a nice, rich, purpled red. And probably hit it with some rust, maybe even some seal brown. If you want that same sort of what you think of as burgundy, you'll get a nice color. And maybe burgundy all by itself would work. I don't know. I threw it out in disgust. No glimmer, you can't drink this. So, any other questions? I have not used Dharma. Cushing's did work and worked quite nicely. It's worked in mixed bats. The only thing I have to remember is just let the roving cool in the dye bath, and it'll pick up the color again. And it seems to hold pretty nicely. My mordant is vinegar. And if I ran out of vinegar, which I did yesterday, I still have some citric acid. So I just mixed that per instructions and threw that in the bottle. Another thing you might do, especially with silk, is you've gotten it nice and wet, put in a very, very tiny amount of Orvis, like a fingernail's worth. Because what happens is with detergent or whatever you would call that stuff, it opens up the scales in the fiber and makes it more receptive to your dye. You don't want a lot, because then you're going to defeat the purpose of the dye. But because the vinegar will slick it and smooth it down, same as our hair conditioner is slightly acidic, so it slicks down our hair, but it also has waxes and assorted other product in it that does nice things for our hair, but isn't good for wool. So
What kind of mordant are you using with your silk?
vinegar.
Vinegar. Just vinegar.
Okay. Just vinegar. Both fibers, because the protein, seem to like acidic.
Okay.
And I have extraordinarily hard water anyway, so it's not going to hurt it.
I've got hard water here too. So, and I've got a beautiful silk that I was given that's just an ugly shade of light purple or light lavender. And I don't know how you make an ugly light lavender, but it is. And I want to do something with it. So may have to get myself some Cushings and try some over dyeing.
Another thing you can do with silk is, I'm blanking on the man's name, but there is a Japanese designer, I'm sure he's passed away by now, that did the most incredible, beyond belief tie-dye on steroids that is utterly amazing. Tuba, I want to say. I'd have to go in the other room and grab the book and find.
Is it called shibori?
It's beyond shibori. No, it's older than shibori. It is similar to shibori in that, yes, it does tying and pleating, stitching and clamping, over dyeing, undoing it, fold it the other way, dye it, painted work, resist work. Unbelievable. I'll have to put the name in the Facebook thing at the end of this, because I don't want to leave dead air here. It's considered rude. And I didn't think to grab the book while I was up. By all means, try other dyes. Do I dye cloth? Not yet. I don't want to fall down that rabbit hole. I'm entirely too tempted. I also haven't dyed yarn that I'm going to weave with for ikat. I keep repeating, I don't need another hobby, but I don't need another hobby. But yes, this would work really nicely for that. You will be so far beyond the Grateful Dead, whoa, look at the rainbow spiral. And you would probably treat it the same way. That is, let the fabric dry, cool in the dye bath. Let it dry completely, then rinse it. Oh, another thing with silk I learned years ago, do not ever use antiperspirant, ever. Because it rots the fabric. The other thing, you can hand wash silk. So what you do with a silk blouse, for instance, is you wash it in your Orvis. You might decide to throw some vinegar in the last rinse, roll it up in a towel, walk on it to get it mostly dry, iron it the rest of the way, and the silk will be gorgeous. What have I missed? We have 20 minutes.
What do you use your, you said you have on your package that you use a package of disposable bamboo skewers?
I did that, and this last week when I said, oh my God, I don't have any samples, I took my measuring spoon, you know, the rectangular style ones, not the full round, stuck the clean end in and mixed it around until I got it fully and thoroughly mixed, whacked it a few times to get it mostly off, rinsed it, dried it, done. I like using stainless steel anyway, and I don't mind using the stainless steel because they're food grade restaurant stainless steel trays. I almost spilled dye on myself once with those disposable horrible things and went, oh no, we're not doing that anymore. Mm-mm. The stainless steel trays you'll want to get two, because having a spare one is very helpful when you go, oh look, this dye bath is just not going to work for me. And I don't really want to try to wrestle with that until it's cool. You have a spare. I work on the stovetop. I did back when I was living in a small apartment. My cats were fine. They never got sick. I didn't poison them or myself then. I don't think it's dangerous. Again, if you have sensitivities of some kind, all bets are off. But I'm still here after 35 years, so but I don't do it every day, all day. I'll do a bunch of it and then I'll stop for weeks or months and then I'll do some more. Oh, if you have a very large batch, say you want to do a sweater and you want all of your yarn to match. This will take you a while. You dye your wool in as much as you need, and you're probably going to need, I was going to do a full-size sweater. I'm well fed. So I figured, okay, I need about 2.5 pounds, 3 pounds. Probably had more at that point. So I had to dye in several batches, and I did splash it. I wanted those light areas. I wanted a fairly light mottled green. Okay. So now I have 3 batches. Took my first batch and just eyeball broke it up into 32 little bitty piles, stuck them in a bag. Did that with the next one, stuck them in a bag. And now I have 32 bags containing 3 little globs. They're about yay big, I guess. Not terribly large because they're all clumped up. So my first batch, grabbed the first bag, kind of wiggled them together, pulled out enough, filled a hand card, carded it back. Went to the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one. Now I've got 32 spats. Rolled them up, because what I did is I took the bats, which are shaped kind of like that in cross section, laid them so that they're kind of even. The bats are sitting like this. The stick was like this, so I'm rolling on a diagonal. Now I have this great big fat doobie. Pulled them all apart. And what I did is I went through each bat quite a few times until I got it thinned out to about like that. Broke it in half, and half, and half, and half. Now I have 32 pieces into a bag. Next. And I did this for everything before I even started spinning. Now I've got 32 bags in the basket. Spin the first one, go to the next bag, spin the next one. And then I plied on them. And I wound up with a very even, nicely variegated yarn. I would suggest you get a drum carder. It will make your life so much better. I have a Fricky Petite. I think it was, I don't know remember how long ago I got it. It was around 400. It's worth it. The only thing I don't like about it is it does have a plastic drive band. These give out, no matter how careful you are, they give out. Mine does not live on the drum carder. It's only used when it's in use. When I take it off, I stick it in a plastic bag and keep Ziploc bag and keep that in the drawer. It helps. But any of those plastic drive bands will eventually break down and they will lose their stick when you least expect it. And you got to buy a new one. Thankfully, Fricky is still in business. But a chain drive is much more expensive, unfortunately. But I got the so-called fur card because I spin everything from cotton to caracal. And it has worked a champ on everything. I love it. It's kind of interesting. The drive wheel is only about this long. So when I'm working, or big around. So when I'm working in Gotland, it's kind of interesting to try to open those bats up. Because that is the size of the bat, and that's almost and I think a Gotland is about that long. But they're an unusually long fleeced breed. So, anything else? Anybody? Have I had a total dye failure? Yeah, that silk that I had hit it with orange and dark green and blue, and it was gonna be gorgeous and it looked great. And the temperature was too high and it turned into these weird, indescribable colors that, like I said, I couldn't even give them a name. And I think I have it somewhere because I don't throw anything out. You know how that is. So I learned from you'll learn from it. And using burgundy. These bats are perhaps 2 ounces, more or less. If I lose it, do I care? No. Besides, when my spinning guild would have a dye fest, and someone would say, "Oh man, this colorway, this is hideous." Somebody else would walk by and go, "Oh my God, I'll trade you. Here, have some pipe. I want that." So, and if I don't like this one, and I was trying for a sea blue green today and got one that I really can't tell from the green here. I guess my brain wants to do green today. If I don't use it now, I'll use it some other time. That's the fun thing about playing with the dyes. If you don't like it, you can either share it, give it to somebody else, or you might be able to overdye it. And if you got it dark, I do feel bad for one little girl that went to one of the Griffin dye retreat, did an all-day event, and it was getting late. It was cold. It was starting to get dark. And this little girl wanted purple. Well, we'd hit the dye bath a little too hard, and she got an absolutely splendid raven's wing, nearly black, but it had like faint streaks of magenta and turquoise and green in it. It was gorgeous. But she wanted purple. She was not happy. And I felt so bad for her. I looked around and said, "Does anybody have any white roving? We can do that." Because I had brought dyes, but I hadn't brought roving because we had vendors who had roving and they'd already packed up and they're like, "Are you done yet? Are you done yet? Are you done yet?" And I did feel bad for the poor kid because we were saying that's gorgeous, and she just thought we were being stupid adults and being condescending to her, and she didn't want that. And I can see why she'd think that, because when I was that age, I would have thought the same. But yeah, if you get, and I have obviously been getting a little too enthusiastic, I was like, I didn't quite want it this dark. Oh wow. Two things I can do with one that's really dark. I can ply it with another color. I can also lay another bat on top of it or pull it in thin strips and pull those two rovings together and ply that. Another thing I could do, let's say I thought, well, this is too dark. Use like this dark bluish green for the next roving and add, orange, because orange seems to work really nicely, or some yellow and some brown. It still has this color that they have in common. And some of the greens will surely be the same, but it'll be a different, slightly lighter or light and dark or more variation than this has. You apply those together because you've used something that's similar but not the same. You can actually get some really neat color effects that way. For instance, one roving I bought years ago had, let's see, a sulfur yellow, pink, like a rosy pink, a magenta, and a purple, a dark plum purple. Because it had that yellow in it, it really didn't work well. Now, if I had two rovings, one of which had that sulfur and the rose and the magenta-ish color, and then another roving that had the darker three, ply those together and you'd have the pop of that sulfur yellow. It'd look really cool. And that way you can also say, it's only a couple ounces. Yeah, but you could make two of them. Now you've got a full bobbin. You usually can adapt a mistake and say, I meant to do that, like the cat falling off the couch. I meant to do that.
There's another question. If you have a bat that you don't like, can you recard them to another bat?
Sure. Yeah, you can. Open up your bat completely. Make sure it's dry. These aren't quite, surprisingly. Certainly you can. That's another way to recover something. You can also, you know how some people like art bats and they want little flecks of color? Really, the only way I would do that is using silk noil. The reason you don't want to use wool is what those neps are. Neps are bad. The reason neps are bad is they're this little chunk of felt with some hair sticking out of it. So it reaches into your yarn and it starts to pull itself out, and your immediate response is yank that sucker off. Don't do that. Reason you don't want to do that is now it's pulled some more fiber, which is snarled on itself, and you're going to repeat the process. You have to sit there and snip, cut them off. So I'm not going to put noils in there. That's something you want to watch for with really fine wools too, is if they get nips, use them for a hat, use them for a scarf or a shawl, not a sweater, not anything that's going to get a lot of rubbing. I learned that to my grief. I had at least one sweater that was really pretty, but yeah. So what about over dyeing a bat? Yeah, I think you can. And if you haven't felted it the first time, you're less likely to felt. You're kind of at risk, but not really, especially if you use a coarser wool like Romney. A couple of these, my notes claim are caracal, but they're pretty soft for caracal. Yeah, you can over dye it. You may wind up with it too dark, but hey, try it. What's the worst that can happen? I'm much more likely to over dye silk than wool because you are heating the wool. And you do have to get it to a particular, oh, the water, I don't use a thermometer. What I've usually found is it won't take if the water isn't quite hot enough. So you just barely want to see simmer bubbles, barely. You'd rather not see simmering at all because that's also risking felting. But if you can keep it just below the bubbles, you're fine. Anybody? Oh, and if you were wondering, does the Mylar burn? Yeah, it can, but it doesn't at the temperatures that you're dyeing at. This has I've never seen it shrivel and leave little lumps, which I'd probably also be smelling burning wool. You don't ever want to do that. It's really, really nasty.
Do you use a thermometer?
No, I don't.
You just eyeball it.
And yelp when I stick my hand in and say, "Ah, that's too hot." I probably should, but that's like, how much vinegar do you use? About
Yeah.
much.
We're just about 5 minutes until the end. So if there are any more questions, you can pop them in the chat, or it's been working well for people to unmute themselves if they have anything.
Okay. I can download all 65 photos if you like. Where should I put them? Who should I send them to?
If there's a link to an album, we can put that in the, well, I think Debbie's here if she has an idea, but I would think on the event page.
Okay.
Sorry, what was that question?
My question was, I have about 65 photos that could go for this.
Oh, cool. Yeah, if you go to the to Fibrary, click on the event tab, scroll down to the class, which will sometime in the near future go into past classes. But if you go in there, post all the pictures, all the info that you want, that'd be great. We plan to leave Fibrary up. And I plan to leave the class info up. It'll just keep it there as past classes, I believe, forever.
Okay.
So just anything you want the students to know, you can put it there.
Okay.
Also, I will be reaching out to you, Elena, about what you want put on the info for when we post this on YouTube. We can't post photos there, but I can get other info from you to post there. But we'll talk about that offline.
Okay. So, okay. Good to see you folks.
Well, Elena, thank you very much. It was a wonderful class, and both classes have been terrific. And thanks everyone who participated, putting questions.
Thank you, Anne, for hosting.
You're all
Yeah,
welcome.
thank you very much.
You're welcome. I'm going to stop the recording.